Well, hello YouTube and welcome back to the channel. So I made a decision about which language I would choose as my first language read. And there was a few things that I thought about in before I took the decision. And like I was saying in my other video, I was leaning towards C++, but then a few things came up while I was thinking through that lineage. So yeah, I was leaning towards C++, and um, a few things came up. Well, the first thing that came up was that there's actually more time required to learn C++ than it is to learn C. Way more time required. So that was the first thing that came up, and not only do you need to learn C++, the language itself, I would also need to learn the standard library, and that's another venture on its own, another travel, you know, more time consumption. So as a beginner, um, C++ does not seem like the best choice to take if you're a beginner, unless you got all the time in the world. You got all the time in the world. Nothing's gonna distract you. You're just gonna sit and read your books, and you ain't got nothing to worry about. All right. Um, so yeah. Now, by now you would realize I'm actually speaking about C as the language that I would prefer to start out with than the other language. So yeah, I chose C more than C++. So I lined out a few things that I want to discuss, and I wrote them down. Uh, the first thing, right? So I lined out a few things that I want to discuss to why I chose C over C++. Besides the first thing I said, there's a few other things, right? So the first thing I said was that C is much less time consuming in learning than it would be to go for C++, than it would be than C++. So another few things because I am designing and gonna build and code an operating system. So the first thing I got is C is an easier language to learn. That's true. It's not complicated. Um, there's certain things that are done in C differently than they are in C++, and C++ kind of for like the thing I said last time, strings. In C++, you just use an object called the string object and a few other variations of writing strings. But with C, you have to use an array. Now, that does not mean the language is not easy to learn. It just means within the language, that's the way the language is designed, and that's the way the language is used. It doesn't mean it's hard to learn. Um, okay. If there's certain things in the language that are designed different than other languages, where in another language you just use a name like an object name, an identifier, and or keyword, and you write your string. But in C, you would have to use an array and build an array and construct an array to write your string. It doesn't mean C is harder to learn. It just means it's done differently. Okay. So it is a smaller language, so less time to learn. Yeah, so that's the other thing. It is a much smaller language, way smaller than C++. So it's less time to learn than it would be to learn C++. So and the other thing is, as a beginner, it is easier to learn a small language than it is to learn a very large language like C++, which is basically the same thing as the previous one. But what I mean by this one, this third one, is that, well, if you have so much in the language, you would have to learn these concepts within the language. So, like OOP, for instance, in inheritance, uh, and encapsulations and I forgot, but yeah, the four basic pillars of OOP that you must know. So the more you have in the language, the more you have to learn the concepts of these features in the language, right? So that's what I mean by that one. As a beginner, it's easier to learn a small language than it is to learn a very large language that has more complicated concepts than a small language would. Okay. So the other thing goes into design. When designing anything, especially for a beginner like me, right? When you design anything, it is better to have a lesser defined instruction to work with, like the C programming language, than using a much larger definition for describing your model or system. Okay, so yeah, basically as it says right here, if the language itself doesn't use so many constructs, so you can write your code, or its constructs are well defined enough that it's minimal, it's small enough to be not overly complicated and more time consumption, and it gives you better, a more feasible way of writing your designing your system, and making a model to describe your system, right? It makes it much easier. The idea is the greater the possibilities of instructions, the more complex the effort of a design of a system is. Meaning there is more options to work with, complicating the design effort of the OS. And that was some that I looked into definitely. So as a beginner, this is what you want to look at. You don't want to look at C++ as a beginner. If you're a professional, hey, and you know C and you want to move on, great, move to C++. But if you're a beginner like I am, hey, I'm choosing C. Okay, so the other thing is kind of like a principle, not really a certain thing. It's a principle I thought about. So it is better to have a footing than to expand in the design and build of the system. So yeah, C is good for that. With C, I would have a footing. A smaller language definition allows for better decision making in code. Okay, so yeah, just like it's saying, or just like I'm saying right here, just like I've written. In other words, right? Just like I've written. Um, the larger the language, the more concepts you gotta know. So the more possibilities that you can do with the language. Um, it expands the decision making of what trade-offs you would take, and what route you might decide on. And yeah, a smaller language is better for decision making in code, way better. So I'm choosing C. And finally, C is a great language, period. Okay, so yeah, I'm choosing C. Now, of course, in my other video, in my last video, I was saying that I'm not gonna read that book, and I'm not. I'm not gonna read it. So I ordered a few books. They should be here by Tuesday, Wednesday, this upcoming Tuesday or Wednesday. Okay, today is Friday, so it should be next Tuesday, next Wednesday. They should be here. They're not coming here to this location. I had to send them to another location. I have a relative who's down in the city right now, and I sent them at the location they're at, and they're gonna pick it up and just come the same day or next day. They're delivered to the other location in the city. So one of the books I got was from A Press, the publisher, A Press. It's called Beginning C. I think this is the seventh editions that I ordered. Seventh edition, right? And like I was saying in one of my previous videos, there's a book I really wanted to get. It was called, the way I said it in the previous video, Mathematics for Programmers by A Press. It actually wasn't by A Press. I don't know why I remembered it wrong. It was by No Starch Press, I think. No Starch Press? Yeah, I think. It's called Math for Programmers by No Starch, the publisher, right? And I ordered a few other books along the way. Might as well because since I'm gonna make the delivery anyway, make the order anyway, so I might as well get a few other books in there, which I did. Since my last video, I haven't read any of the books. I've been kind of like just thinking it. What am I gonna do? C++ or C? And I really took some time to make a decision, and I'm glad I did because I tell you, there's a lot to learn in C++. There's a whole lot to learn in C++. Not to mention the template library. All right. Could you imagine the language, which is very large, the standard library and the template? Very, very large thing and a lot of time consumption. So for me, C was way better, and I didn't think I was gonna come to this decision. I really thought I was gonna choose C++, and I was actually leaning heavily towards C++. But then I'm like, what the heck, yo? After I made the decision for C, I'm like, I'm gonna order the books. So when I ordered the books, I said, yeah, this probably was the best decision I ever made in this journey of my operating system, Mr. OS. So that's as far as I'm going today. Do subscribe to my channel. Do like my videos. Now I'm not gonna study C++ until the books come. I just gonna there's no point in doing that. Once the books come, once they arrive to my location here, once they're picked up from the other location and come here, yeah, then I'm delving deep. Since I got the books now, right? So just like always, up until next time, thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening, and goodbye, YouTube.